Prof, good to have you, and I want to believe that you are fine this morning.
Thank you. I'm doing terrific.
We thank God. Right. Prof, in recent times, the issue of unemployment has been very high. I mean, I'm talking about graduate unemployment. And maybe I should have sought your permission, seek your permission before maybe asking you this.
Okay.
How was it like landing on your first job after first degree?
After first degree. So my first job actually was with Siemens Healthcare in Piscataway, New Jersey. And this was, I think, 2 days after 9/11, where companies were actually laying people off. And they had a project, and the project was looking for somebody that had experience in solid modeling, computer-aided design, and manufacturing. And, a recruiter reached out to me and said, we have a role here that might be of interest to you. And they flew me in, picked me up in a limousine, brought me up to this building. I interviewed for it. Within 48 hours, they had made a decision that I was the top candidate among over 100 people that were seeking the same role.
Okay. That was close about 17 years ago.
That's 2001.
So that should be about 17 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So around that time, if you look at our Ghanaian economy, our environment, looking for a job around that time as compared to this time, is there any difference?
So that was the revolution time. I think, when I left Ghana, we had 3 universities. Today we have perhaps 80. And so very few people were going to the university at the time. I actually remember in the early 70s when my uncle was in medical school in Legon, there were probably less than 5,000 students on that whole campus. And so they were employable. Essentially, we were training what we needed, right? We needed a lot of civil servants, post-independence. We needed to replace expats that were leaving. There were jobs available, essentially. I mean, people were being snagged. Doctors were getting brand new cars, living in plush bungalows. Most of them are run down now. So I think the graduate level, the number of people who were graduating then were fewer, and the opportunities were there. And now we have more than quadruple those numbers. So obviously there's a shock to the system.
So it could mean that we are producing more graduates, but lesser job opportunities are being added.
Yes, but let me also make a point that it's not a unique problem to Ghana. I actually think the British during colonialism experienced the same thing. What they did intelligently was that they dumped their SS graduates in the colonies, okay? As colonial officials, and if they couldn't find them colonial jobs, they turned them into missionaries. And I don't intend to make a point out of this. And then they also made sure that instead of allowing manufacturing in the colonies, manufacturing was happening in England. So they would send raw materials over there, and they were providing local jobs, and merchants were making money in the colonies. So they found a balance. Now, they don't have the same challenges anymore that we have here. I think there's still unemployment, but it's on the low end because they migrated into other sectors. The financial institution in the UK is probably one of the most powerful in the world. A lot of A-level graduates end up as traders in the financial sector. They also move into high tech. So it's kind of a dynamic process, right? You have to try to evolve as your educational institutions evolve. We haven't done a good job at that. We have more graduates still looking at the same old jobs that were previously available.
And this, our research tells us that Academic City College has taken a great note at this and is doing something very different. When we get into the discussion of Academic City College, we'll ask you what different you are doing, which is a solution to the problem we have. Okay. But still talking about this unemployment challenge, some have the view that the graduate unemployment or the graduate we have are the product of the tertiary educational institutions.
Yes.
And some also make a point that they don't actually fit into the space that the industries have. I find it difficult to understand this. Is it because people haven't had the necessary knowledge and skills from the classrooms, which is of relevance to what the industries are looking for, or the job opportunities are simply not there? Which one of these is probably a true reflection of the problem we have?
I think there's a complete disconnect between the aspirations of our educational institutions and the practical realities on the ground. Now, one reason why that could be the case is that there are no stakeholder involvement in how what the industrial needs are versus what academia ought to train to. So I'll give you an example. Carnegie Mellon University just started an undergraduate degree in artificial intelligence this week, the first of its kind in the world. Why? There's high demand for it from Silicon Valley. There is high demand for it in governance. The artificial intelligence and machine learning is the big buzzwords of our days. So an institution that is very agile, an institution that listens to its stakeholders, has made the first move to produce graduates for that space. So these guys are not going to lack employment. If you dial back to our regulatory framework, it will probably take you years to try to introduce a new course like this. And if there is nothing similar anywhere for folks to compare to, you probably get frustrated introducing this. So there is no immediate reactions to these dynamic changes that are happening in the world. So we are producing graduates the traditional way, giving them degrees in sociology, biology, chemistry, without really understanding where they are going to end up. The second thing that I think is a key challenge is that I don't think there is any governmental institutions today in Ghana that can tell you that in the next 30 years, we're going to need 2,000 doctors or 500 computer scientists or 300 computer engineers. There's no mechanism in place. So it's almost like the institutions themselves are grouping in the dark, trying to anticipate what industry needs, and then they produce them. The other thing too you have to realize is that the major number of students that we produce are from government institutions, and government institution gets funding from government. I mean, they complain they don't get much, but they do get funding. They hire many more people, they create new departments. And so there's also a political dynamic. We can create new departments, promote people without really being accountable for outcomes. So it's not one single thing that is at play. It's an interplay of multiple things that have kind of converged into the challenges that we're seeing in the unemployment arena.
Okay. It is also believed that our society is gradually changing. Our way of doing things are always changing. And that educational institutions must also adapt to this change by coming out with courses that will be relevant to some of these changes. Do you think that we still have relevant courses from our educational institutions?
So let me put it this way. As an academic, I think that we have to open, the alternatives for knowledge very broadly. I don't think the problem is necessarily the courses. Because if somebody is interested in music, they should be able to go to the university and study music. But you can study music and own a music company.
All right.
You can study sociology and start an organization, an HR organization that is hiring people. I think the challenge is that we have not been able to connect the knowledge with our practical realities. So I'll give you an example. I met a young man recently who comes into my office and he says, I said, what do you do? That was my first question. He was there to interview for a job and he said, Doc, I started an internet company with my school fees. And I had to stay at home for another 2 months because I didn't have money to go pay my fees in Legon. But I wanted to start a communication company and I did that. A few years later, I saw cell phones coming. So I decided that I needed to diversify, otherwise my business was going to die. So I moved into the printing press industry and today I have an excellent relationship with Canon. and I want to become one of the largest printing companies in Ghana. I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And then he makes a short presentation for me on entrepreneurship. And there was really no direct connection between what he has connected and what his experiences were. So I said, if you had just presented your experiences to me, that's exactly what you just presented, but you've never been able to connect the dots for me. So I see that cutting across a lot of the people that I encounter, that for them, university knowledge is one side and this entrepreneurship discussion is on the other side. And I think we as academics need to connect these dots for these kids. It's the dots that are missing. It's not about the courses that the universities are offering, whether they are good or not. It's what do you really do with it.
It means the mindset of most of these graduates is that once I am done, once I complete my first degree or possibly second degree, I must be looking for a job opportunity in an office.
That's correct.
Nicely dressed with a tie, suit, and all that.
That's correct.
And for that matter, any other job which is possibly out of the formal sector is not for them.
That's correct.
And that, according to you, is totally wrong.
It's totally wrong because, look, I met a kid who took his high school project in electrolysis and he turned it into a $10 million business. And a friend of mine, Bernard Nzengemana from Rwanda, actually worked for this guy, and he was finishing his master's. And this young man asked him, he said, Bernard, now that you're about to finish your master's, what do you plan to do with your life? And he looked at him and he said, I'm looking for a job. So the guy said, Ben, how come everybody is looking for a job? He said, well, that's what we are taught in school. You go to school, you finish, you get a job, you raise a family. And he said, let me tell you what, I realized in high school that I was not a college material. So I took my project and turned it into the very business you are working for. So you guys have to start tuning yourselves away from being job seekers to job creators, because it's really not that hard.
That is very true. And I think I totally subscribe to what you have shared with us, because I can say I'm an example to that. I sit here as a radio personality. I had my HND program in accountancy. I did my first degree at GIMPA, Operations and Project Management. But 90% of my business life is farming, poultry to be specific, and I love doing that. And it's been very, very rewarding, if you ask me.
I don't doubt that. I think that the opportunities in this country are limitless. We just need to reconfigure the way that we look at life. You can sell yams, fried yams, and become, there was a very famous cartoon when I was growing up in Ghana with Muguyaro. And Muguyaro used to work for a lady, and he decided that he wanted to join the exodus to Nigeria in the 90s. And so when Ghanaians were deported, he came back, and then he went to where he used to formerly pound fufu. And the fufu woman was no longer there. In place of the shack where that fufu was pounded was a tall story building. So he asked somebody, say, what happened here? Where is that woman? And the person said, that's her story building.
Wow.
And so in this caption, Muguyaro said, shey. Hey, in this world, everything you do, if you do one properly, there is benefit. So that's a cartoon, but what it actually says is that, look, if you hang on to something and you are passionate about it, you can actually make a living out of it, and you can apply science and technology and the expertise that you learn in the classroom to entrepreneurship. And we talk loosely about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is not a course that you take. Entrepreneurship is an experience that you have to subject yourself to. And you have to fail a few times, and you have to wipe your butt and move on.
Prof, speak to me. Academic City College. Yeah. I know it's a college, and being a college, it's education in nature. Yeah. You may have more information to share with us. Academic City College is about what?
Definitely. So Academic City College, as you have indicated, is a tertiary institution in Ghana. And I come to it because I believe in the value proposition that it has, educating the next generation of Africans to be entrepreneurial, to understand how to work in a collaborative environment, and to execute this within a context of ethics. Now, that's the buzzword everybody can write about, right? So I come in from industry. I come in with the can-do spirit that things can be done, the seemingly can be made possible. And so what we are looking to do is, how do we come in with experiential learning?
And when we say experiential learning, what's the meaning of that?
I'll come to that. So
okay.
I will take my marketing and sales student, take them down the road and show them this lady who has been cooking wachi or frying yams for the last 30 years under a shack. And I will ask them, how can you help this woman scale? How can you help her go mainstream? And that's your class project. You will get the best experience than working in a bank by doing that. At the end of that exercise, you can develop your own consulting company helping small-scale businesses scale up. Wow. So it's direct hands-on, right? So that's one. And then we want to take this fear factor of that students learn by just sitting in class and listening, So we talk about entrepreneurship. People study entrepreneurship. They know what it is. They can tell you about risks. They can tell you about resources. But we want them to be able to apply this directly to a problem, a real-life problem in their environment. On the STEM side, if you think about it, in many schools around the world, in the Princetons, the MITs, students work on projects per course. Every course you take, you do a project. And the question nobody answers is that what happens at the end of that semester? What becomes of that project? If you go to Princeton, where I did my PhD work, you go down the basement, you see dissertations pile up on shelves, thousands of them, great ideas that have just simply been shelved. So with that experience, I say, okay, for every semester, let's find out what sets of courses you are taking as a student. Let's figure out how you can create a single project that reflects all these components. So what does that mean? At the end of that semester, you could come up with a product that could become an entrepreneurial product. And I had hinted earlier that the dots are not being connected. So students see the world as courses and classes. They don't see them as systems. And for you to develop an entrepreneurial culture, everything must be looked from a system perspective.
That is great. And it reminds me, somewhere last year, I interviewed a young PhD holder from University of Alberta, if I'm correct, and he shared with I asked him what makes the learning over there different from what we have here, because proud to being a student at University of Alberta, he was also a student at University of Ghana, and I asked him, so what is the difference? And he said exactly what you have shared with me, that over there it is practical in nature. It's not the classroom, listen, read, and then produce answers, but it is having a feel of what you've been taught in the classroom outside, having a great feel of what is being taught outside. And I see that in Academic City College, based on what you've shared with us.
Yes, you have to live it. One of the things I keep emphasizing is that how do you really teach something that you have not experienced? Unless you're willing to learn, unless you're willing to be one of your students. And I think that is what we're emphasizing at Academic City College, that each and every one of us, whether you are on the staff or you're a faculty member, you should see yourself as a learner also, and immerse yourself in that experience with the students, and create an atmosphere where people feel comfortable to share ideas, where there are no barriers between professors and students, where people acknowledge mistakes. I was telling somebody yesterday, when I taught at Ashesi University, one time a student asked me a question, and I said, I don't know the answer, I'm sorry. And the whole class was deflated, because they have grown up in a culture where teachers are supposed to know everything. And so, I stood there, I was a little embarrassed.
And in that same culture, it could also mean that whatever the teacher tells the student,
it's final.
It's final, and it is right. Yeah. Whether it is right in reality or not, it is final, which is dangerous.
So I said, let's all go home and do our homework, and tomorrow when we come back, we'll compare notes. And my student didn't go around campus telling everybody that their dean of engineering didn't have an answer to the problem. They actually saw how human it really is to learn, and that there's no single person that has answers to all the problems. And then the next day we came back, we shared our ideas, and I think I was probably one of their most beloved professors.
Okay, that's good. We have just 2 minutes more to take leave of listeners on the program. So who qualifies to be a student at Academic City College?
I think the starting point is that you have to be passionate about what you want to do. If you have projects and project ideas, we'll create the atmosphere for you to continue to develop them. There are, of course, requirements by the National Accreditation Board, but if you have that minimum set of requirements, and you are passionate about the future, you are passionate about taking ideas and materializing them, then we are a place for you. And we want to be partners, partners with government, partners with civil society in this effort to solve one of the major challenges we have in this country today, which is unemployment.
Okay, so how do I locate Academic City College, and possibly any contact number if we want to call to make some more inquiries? I'm sure our assistant around us is going to be of help to us.
You can find us on accghana.com. You can also reach us on 055-426-4486. Again, 055-426-4486. We have a beautiful campus coming up in Hacho this fall, and we are looking forward to having our first set of engineering students, and it's going to be an experiential journey, and we'd like you to come along with us.
Prof, I'm grateful for your time with us on the program, and we've loved your submission. So hopefully, once in every month, we'll make it a point to engage you on this program on different issues.
I appreciate your kindness.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Professor Fred McBagonluri. He is the president of Academic City College, and I want to believe that the submissions he has given us have been of great interest to you. My name is Kwabena Buaben.